Hi, I'm California State Senator Dave Cortese. Thank you for joining us here today for the 8th Annual Inclusion Collaborative State Conference hosted by the Santa Clara County Office of Education to learn and discuss inclusive practices for all students. Today, you'll hear from experts and peers in the field that are working to increase educational opportunities, safeguard high program quality, and foster community awareness around student and family needs. Many here today are acutely focusing on the unique challenges our students are facing today, including increasing engagements for students with neurodiverse community to reduce the negative impacts that social isolation is having on our children and our entire society. Our state is making transformative improvements and investments in professional development opportunities to further inclusion, including new ongoing funding in this year's state budget. And I know we will continue to prioritize specialty and high-quality education for students with diverse abilities. This year, I'm proud to author SB 692, the Special Education Inclusion Act, sponsored by the Santa Clara County Office of Education, a bill that passed unanimously through the State Senate, which endeavors to further inclusion of students with disabilities when appropriate and incentivize districts to provide general education teachers with training and professional development on teaching strategies related to the most common mild to moderate disabilities. So thank you for joining us today to interact and reflect on best practices, and thank you to the Santa Clara County Office of Education and all of our partners for everything that you have done and continue to do to uphold and improve the quality and effectiveness of our school systems for every child.
Hello, I am Dr. Mary Ann Dewan, Santa Clara County Superintendent of Schools, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to the 8th Annual Inclusion Collaborative Virtual State Conference. The resilience we now embody as a result of one of the most tumultuous years in education has given us the insight and determination to develop practices and partnerships while we intensify our work to dismantle systems that are incongruent with celebrating and supporting student diversity. It is with this intention in mind that this year's conference theme is Inclusioneers Empower. Our understanding of inclusion is broadening. Normalizing differences gives us an opportunity to expand learning to encompass diverse approaches to education. During our time together, we will examine the goals of inclusion and how they have continued to evolve as we learn more about diversity and identity. We will discuss and develop strategies for advocacy and celebration, as well as make plans of action. The Inclusion Collaborative has made significant strides in highlighting and addressing inequitable practices in our education system statewide. They are eliminating barriers within the educational system with practices such as Universal Design for Learning and the Ways to Equity Playbook, which was introduced last year to provide educators with a framework for creating an atmosphere conducive to celebrating equity and diversity. The learning and coaching offered by the Inclusion Collaborative make an impact and are key to engaging our most vulnerable students. We continue to bring to the forefront active participation on many platforms, aimed at creating the most inclusive and equitable education environments possible. We know these important conversations must continue so that we can take the necessary, actionable, and meaningful steps towards attaining the educational system all of our students deserve and need to thrive. In our time together, there will be opportunities for you to learn from, share, and collaborate with peers, develop relationships across agencies to support inclusive and equitable practices, receive important data, and see various evidence-based practices. We will continue to generate focused conversations and provide more guidance for developing strong, sustainable, inclusive, and equitable practices, policies, and opportunities for professional development. The conference program includes varying topics that are meant to inform and inspire. You'll hear from guest speakers such as Keynote speaker Shelley as she and others share their experiences in applying evidence-based practices that promote learning for all students. We will explore how we have used existing concepts and structures to guide instruction during this pandemic, empowering and transforming children's early learning experiences with a culturally responsive lens of inclusion. I encourage you to have courageous conversations that not only identify and address systemic inequities, but create a climate that empowers our most marginalized students. I invite you to participate and engage in the conference sessions that we are honored to host this year, including by topic, My Name, My Identity, Trauma Responsive Practices for Early Childhood Leaders, Creating an Inclusive Classroom with Connection, Promoting Equitable Outcomes with Inclusive Practices, and other breakout sessions geared towards equity and access, health and wellness, and partnerships. There are also sessions categorized according to student age groups, including birth to 5 years, TK to 6th grade, and middle school to higher education, as well as sessions that are intended for use with students of all ages. The Santa Clara County Office of Education is committed to serving our students and providing positive opportunities in learning for all of them. I know that this is a vision that you share, and I thank you again for joining us for these 2 days of learning, conversation, and reflection. Together, we can give students the tools necessary to thrive in school and in life. You will be inspired. You will be empowered. There may be new perspectives and viewpoints shared that increase your awareness, all of which are designed to facilitate important, focused work that you will take back to your classrooms, school campuses, and communities. Thank you for your participation, commitment, and work to ensure inclusivity and equity in education and empowering students.
Welcome to the 8th Annual Inclusion Collaborative State Conference. My name is Kathy Wahl, and I'm the Director of the Inclusion Collaborative. I am so happy you are joining us this year. If this is your first time attending our conference, welcome. If you are joining us again, welcome back. Our 2021 Inclusion Collaborative State Conference will be exclusively virtual again this year. We have a phenomenal program ahead for you, and we know you will leave this conference inspired to move forward on your inclusion journey. Our 2021 Inclusion Collaborative State Conference theme is Inclusioneers Empower. When students, educators, families, and communities are empowered, they can truly be at their very best. Empowerment is what supports and makes inclusive practices happen. We all know that this empowerment is what leads to higher quality inclusive education. And we know that children learn better together, they develop stronger social emotional skills, learn to respect differences, and develop better understanding and acceptance of diversity when learning together. By working together, we can provide the tools and strategies needed for all students to thrive and be empowered by inclusion. As we continue to move through this pandemic, we have learned that we need to be even more intentional and creative to provide needed supports for every student to succeed. Our experience providing education during a global pandemic has really highlighted the multitude of inequities that exist in our educational system. The Inclusion Collaborative continues to promote equity in all its work, and we continue to use an empathy lens to focus on anticipating and addressing systemic barriers to educational advancement and cultural sustainment of all marginalized student groups, regardless of their abilities. Over the next 2 days, our amazing conference presentations will focus on equity and inclusion and building that sense of belonging for all of our students. I would like to thank the many organizations and individuals who have supported the Inclusion Collaborative State Conference. Thank you to our Santa Clara County Board of Education for their continuous support of the Inclusion Collaborative. Also, a big thank you to Senator Dave Cortese for his welcome today and for his sponsorship of inclusion legislation that will impact students in our state. I would like to acknowledge our biggest inclusion champion, our very own Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Marianne Dewan. Dr. Dewan works tirelessly promoting equity and inclusion, not only for our own county, but also statewide. I am so appreciative of her support and leadership. She truly makes inclusion happen. Another inclusion champion and great friend to the Inclusion Collaborative is Mrs. Charmaine Warmenhoven, who has contributed greatly for the past 16 years, both as an advisor and funder. And last but not least, I must thank all of our Inclusion Collaborative staff who have made this annual event a reality. Without them, we would not be here. I especially need to highlight Myra Montanez, our conference coordinator, who has again managed every little detail of our virtual conference for us. She has worked 24/7 to make this conference a reality. Thank you so much, Myra. I would also like to acknowledge Sung Park, who has provided the technical support and managed the production of our conference, an amazing feat that only Sung could make happen. Thank you, Sung. I would also like to take a moment to thank our many sponsors this year. Firstly, our amazing inclusion champions, First Five Santa Clara County, Strong Start of Santa Clara County, Silicon Valley Community Foundation, and the Western Educational Equity Assistance Center. Our inclusion leaders include Brooks Publishing. Our inclusion facilitators include Changing Perspectives and Lakeshore Learning. And lastly, our inclusion advocate, the Discovery Source. You can learn more about our amazing sponsors by visiting their Schedule profile, all listed under sponsors. We truly couldn't have made it happen without their support. Just a few housekeeping items I would like to review. Please review your Schedule, an event website that has everything you'll need for this conference. We will be recording the majority of our sessions this year, so please check back on our website for more information. To access both CEUs and certificates of completion, please refer to the resource section on Schedule. Please note that these will not be available until the conclusion of our conference. We also have online evaluations that will be provided to you via Schedule, so please be sure to provide feedback for us. We will be sending our virtual swag link to everyone who has completed the conference evaluation. My hope is that you will learn and reflect on the sessions you attend. We also want you to become re-energized and motivated to continue this important work, even during these unprecedented times. We want to thank you all for attending. Please enjoy the 2021 Inclusion Collaborative State Conference. It is my great pleasure to now introduce our first keynote presenter, Shelley Moore. She is an amazing advocate for inclusion and diversity and presents information in a very fresh and engaging manner. Shelley is a highly sought after teacher, researcher, consultant, and storyteller, and has worked with school districts and community organizations throughout Canada and the United States. Her research and work have been featured at national and international conferences and is constructed based on theory and effective practices of inclusion and curriculum and teacher professional development. I absolutely love Shelley's 5 More Minutes, her own video series of amazing short clips on supporting inclusive education for all. Be sure to check them out. Can you say bowling? I actually met Shelley in person in 2019, and I can't believe she's here with us today, speaking at our 2021 Inclusion Collaborative State Conference. Please help me welcome Shelley Moore.
Hello, everyone. Are we live? Are we ready to go? Let's do this. Good morning, my friends. It is so nice to be joining with you this morning. Oh my goodness, everything is always so like nerve-wracking when things are like when there's production. Hello, everyone. I am Shelley Moore, and I will just start off by, I know someone's going to ask me, Shelley, where are we going to get these slides? So on the screen right now, you're going to see just contact information. The slides that I'm going to share with you today are already posted on my website, blogsomemore.com. So if you'd like to follow along, you can. Top 3 social media. If you're interested in that, I'll show you this again at the end, though, so don't worry too much if you miss it. I want to jump right in, though, because we don't have a lot of time together. And I would like to start off by letting you know that I am honored to be joining you from the traditional, unceded, and ancestral territory of Squamish Nation, and specifically Nequillicum, which is known today as Bowen Island. So I am just north. I am just north of you. We're practically honorary. You're honorary Canadians, all of you. We're in the same time zone. That's got to mean something. And so if you've ever been to Vancouver, it's just north of Seattle. We're very, very close. We can see, like, I can see Washington from my house. Like, we're so close. And so if you've ever been to Vancouver, lovely city, you're all invited. I live on an island just off the coast. And so if you look kind of like on this map here, Bowen Island is one of 350 islands who are part of something called the Island Trust. Thank you. Everyone's saying hi. Part of the Islands Trust, who have unanimously come together to commit to engage in reconciliation efforts. So something that's very near and dear to my heart. I moved to Bowen at the beginning of my own reconciliation journey and understanding the importance of the history of the land and acknowledging the people who have lived here before me. And I'm also a new parent. I have a daughter named Meta who is 5 months old, and I've kind of have this new kind of like responsibility that has emerged that I'm sure parents out there have experienced, where, you know, all of a sudden you're like, oh my goodness, I have to teach my child what I didn't learn. When I grew up in Alberta, which is just the next province over, kind of above like Montana, I very much learned that Indigenous issues were things of the past. And so really understanding that the reconciliation efforts within North America to not just acknowledge lands, but also to understand that the colonial structures that have marginalized so many populations are not a problem. The present day people, and, you know, looking ahead to what actions we can take so that we can prevent these actions happening in the future. And so whenever, if you know my work at all, like, we're going to be talking today about inclusive education, you know, it always comes back to this, you know, yes, you know, inclusion is very, very important, but I don't know how we can engage in equity and reconciliation efforts without talking about inclusion, because they're the same thing. And, you know, inclusion is not something new. Indigenous populations have lived with inclusive philosophy and pedagogy forever. And so it's really us catching up and acknowledging the importance of the history as settlers to this incredible place that we live and share the land on. So if you know the lands that you are joining on, the historical land that you're joining on, I invite you to share it in the chat box and really kind of acknowledge that the place that we are is part of our identity and the identity of people who were here long before we were. So, and if you're not sure, I invite you to investigate that, because I think it's really part of our conversations about equity and inclusion and moving forward is understanding the role that Indigenous people have in our lives today. Oh, you ready for this? Okay. So if you know me, you know that my work is inclusive education. And I was trying to think about, like, what are we going to talk about today? And I was reminded of a conversation that I had, because, like, I'm going to tell you my story today. I'm going to tell you about what this means to me. And, you know, I've never actually talked to a teacher that says, you know, I don't believe in inclusive education. It's not that people don't believe in it. It's really more like, how do we do it? How does it make sense? How do I do it that it's not more work than what I'm already doing? How do I do it within the confines of all of these like infrastructural conditions that are like counteracting inclusion? Like, how do we do it? And what does this mean? But also depending on who we talk to, it means different things, right? And so Early in my career as an educator, I tried to answer this question for myself, and I'll tell you why I was trying to answer this question. And I went to a conference, and one kind of critical thinker that I was really drawn to, that you may have heard of, is Dan Habib, who is a filmmaker, an incredible advocate with his son Samuel, who's a self-advocate, who's just making waves throughout North America and the world around, how do we create access for all. And so I've always wanted to see him speak. And so I went to a conference, and I introduced myself to Dan. And, at the time I was kind of like a special education teacher in a high school, which I'll tell you about. And I'm telling it, I'm talking, and he looks me like right in the eye, and he's like, Shelley, stop, like, hold on a second. He's like, you're asking the wrong question. And I'm like, what do you mean? Because I'm just like, I'm trying to get people to like figure out what inclusion means. And he's like, no. That's not the right question. You need to ask this question. Why does inclusion matter? And you can't ask that question until you know the answer to that question yourself. And he looked at me like right into my soul. And he's like, why does this matter to you so much? Like, why is this the mountain that you're choosing to climb? There's so many causes in the world. Why inclusion? And no one had ever asked me that before. And I had already I was already diving into my career and trying to figure out how to make this work, but I'd never thought about that. And so I kind of walked away from that interaction. I was just like, why does this matter? And I mean, I had the easy answers, right? It's the right thing to do. It's philosophically sound. Salamanca statement, the UN, persons with disabilities, like this, because I want to be on the right side of history. But none of those actually answer the question about why it matters to me. And so I really thought about it. And so I was kind of forced to kind of reflect back on my own experience and be like, okay, well, what do I think about when I think about inclusion in my life, right? And I'm going to tell you about some key moments in my life that helped me answer this question. And the first one starts in grade 3. Okay, now friends, I'm going to show you pictures of me. I can't believe I'm going to be showing you pictures of me because they're not all good. So just be kind. So grade 3, let's talk about grade 3. Now, in the province that I lived in Alberta, you could kind of get to grade 3 by just being cute. If you were cute and funny, you had good report cards. I'm going to be real honest. Then grade 3 was the first year that our kind of standardized tests starts. They were called PATs, Provincial Achievement Tests. And I didn't do so well on those. And so grade 3 was the year that I realized that, okay, you ready? I'm going to show you. Here I am. Look at that. Look at those cheeks. Hey, ugh. School wasn't as fun a place as I thought it was because I just started to feel like I wasn't successful. I just remember thinking I just had to read so much. I had to write so much. And so this was the year that I was diagnosed myself as having a learning disability. Just sprinkle a few ADHD spices on there and you have a concoction that doesn't necessarily equal school success. And so this was the year that pullout started for me. And now you guys, it's important to know that I'm a Leo. And so this is awful because if you're a Leo and you get pulled out of class, your whole world every day of school is FOMO because pullout always seemed to happen in the most critical moments of fun. I'm going to tell you one story and you'll understand why I remember it. So in grade 3, we were in portables. Okay, so portables, I'm sure you have them, are for schools where the numbers of students are bigger than the capacity of the school. So that they put these classrooms out in the school field. We all do it, right? And oh, Robin, you're so sweet. And the thing about portables though is California is a lovely place. I've been there. It's lovely. Alberta, I mean, it has its own charms, but I'll tell you something about Alberta in portables is that they have their own heating and cooling systems that never work. And so you're either super hot or super cold, and often they are the opposite of what's happening outside. And so in the winter, it is minus 35 and we're sweltering, so we don't know how to dress. And in the summer, we're freezing. But the other thing that's important to know about portables is that when there's elements of weather happening outside, the number one classroom rule was you have to close the doors and the windows because we can't let the outside in, okay? blizzards. So on this one particular day, it was March, and I remember this because it was St. Patrick's Day. Okay, so this is like the middle of Canadian winter, okay, which is nonsense. And we walk in St. Patrick's Day, we walk into our portable, and when you walk in, it's like the cloakroom. So you can't actually see the classroom, you have to walk around this wall. And as soon as we walked into the cloakroom, we knew someone left a window open or something. And because there were snow drifts and it was freezing, and we're like, oh, someone's in trouble. Someone's in trouble. And sure enough, we go around the wall and there is a window wide open. But not only that, every desk in the classroom except for one was turned upside down. Okay. And there were green footprints all over the classroom. And so I was just like, oh, someone didn't leave the window open. The leprechauns opened the window. Now, the one desk that was upright was the one right by the window, and that helped the leprechauns come in. And guess whose desk that was? This was my desk. This is the only day in my entire schooling career that I was popular because I helped the leprechauns get into the classroom. This was the greatest day of my life. The whole day was organized around pot of golds, rainbows, trying to catch the leprechauns. And now that I know what now that I'm a teacher and I know what that involved, and I know that she was probably there till 11 o'clock the night before, like I am like eternally grateful to this woman. Okay. So we're just having the best day. And so everything is themed around leprechauns. Like we're all bundled up in our snow gear because of course, like snow drifts. Anyways, in the middle of the day, the door opens and I know what's happening. So I try and hide because I know what's coming. And this woman walks out around the cloakroom and I don't know her. Okay, this is the first problem is I don't know her. And I think I'm just like, that's not a teacher. Cause she was wearing this like pencil skirt suit. And I'm like, you can't crawl on the ground in that outfit. Like you're not a teacher. And she says the words, hi, I'm here for Shelley Moore. Is she here today? And I'm like, no, she's absent. She's not going to be here all week. So I was strategic, but unsuccessful. And so sure enough, I had to leave with the stranger, put on all my gear, walk to the main school. I am mad. I'm so mad. We walk into the school. Of course, the school's built in the 80s when they believed that like daylight was a distraction. So there's no windows anywhere. And we walk into this windowless room and she wants a writing sample. I'm like, you have got to be kidding me right now. And like in the 80s, the only strategy kids got was really like if they have a hard time writing, the only like support we got around that was just think about it. You think about it, because I'm going to tell you what I was thinking. And this still is a problem today. I can talk all day. I can talk for multiple days because talking, I can communicate in really convoluted ways. I can go over here. I can go over here. Eventually I get to the point. But like when you write, one word has to come after the next word. It's so linear. My brain was never meant to be linear. And I remember telling my teachers, like, my hand doesn't move fast enough and in enough multiple directions for me to get out of my brain what you want to see with my hands. Like my hand would cramp because I was trying to keep up. Oh my goodness. Nonsense. So we're in this room. I am pouting because I'm so good at pouting. And I'm like, I want to go back to the leprechauns. And the woman's just like, you know what? As soon as we get this writing sample, you can go back. And I'm just like, oh man, this woman. So then she makes an error. She says, you know what, Shelley, I'm going to go. Oh, you guys, I love your comments. She's like, I'm going to go to the washroom. And when I come back, we'll get that writing sample. So she leaves me alone in the room. And I'm like, now I can find my escape. And I found it. On the table, there was a telephone. Now, in my defense, this is what we tell 8-year-olds to do when they're in trouble. But maybe we should have had some conversations around severity of trouble, because I simply picked up the phone and did what any 8-year-old would do. I called 911. And the operator answered and she's like, hello, 911. I'm like, hi, I'm trapped in a room with a stranger. And then she got really serious. And then I got scared and hung up the phone. And then I just sat there And then I heard a lot of commotion outside. And so I open the door and I peek out and people are like frantic. They're like, someone from the school called 911. I'm like, it wasn't me. I was in here minding my own business. Friends, they came. Everyone came. Police, firefighters, ambulance. If the FBI was in Canada, they would have come too. And I am just like sitting there, like just shrinking. But I have to tell you, the strategy worked. I didn't have to do the writing sample. And after a very stern talking to, I was sent back to my classroom to enjoy the leprechauns. And I tell you this story because this is exactly my life. I am 2 minutes from chaos at any moment in time, not because I'm manipulative or because I'm trying to get under people's skin. It's just because my whole life I was trying to be resourceful and strategic to get out of situations that would prevent me from having fun or prevent me from not being successful. And just the results of that was a lot of chaos and looked like challenging behavior, but it was more just like ineffective strategies. Let's go with that. And so like to me, this is, I mean, to this day, you can ask my wife, how would you describe Shelley? She would say, she's 2 minutes from chaos at any moment in time. So like this was it. This is elementary, but it was still like, eventually we could laugh about that, But then things became not so funny. So the thing about elementary school is that at a basic level of support, you have a cohort, you have a community, you have peers and you have a teacher who know you really well. But then you go to junior high school. So in Alberta, junior high was grade 7, 8, 9. And now I don't have a cohort anymore. I have to go to all of these different places. Just to give you a sense of the atmosphere of my junior high, it was a former women's prison. So, I mean, it wasn't the most warm context. And I'm going to all of these different places. And here's the other thing about grade 7. So I'm a little disabled. This is the year that I get a little chubby. It's also the year that I realize I'm a little gay. So if you add that onto my learning concoction of failure, now I'm not just a recipe for disaster from learning. I'm also a recipe for disaster in the social network because Alberta is a very, very conservative province, and it wasn't okay now in the early 90s, late 80s to be gay. I mean, it still isn't in many, many places. It's gotten a little bit better. And so in grade 7, I was pretty much bullied to a pulp. I'm going to show you my grade 7 photo. Not many people have seen this, but I'm going to show this to you to prove a point because this photo shows this photo shows just the absolute depths of despair of a 12-year-old. I am just hiding. Like my eyes are barely open. I just am just crouching down. And I'm going to tell you because this year was so awful. But again, there's no anti-bullying campaigns in the late 80s. There's no pink t-shirt day to save, to stand up for the gay kids. There's none of those types of things. And so the only really response was, whenever me or my mom complained about bullying, the response was, oh, we didn't see it. And I'm like, bullies are smarter than that. And it got so bad. I was watching volleyball in the gym one lunchtime, and someone put a firecracker in my ear, and I lost partial hearing on my left side. So there's actual empirical evidence that this is happening, and just nothing is being done. The teachers and the principal are like, well, we didn't see it. I'm just like, so you can imagine. So I just stopped going to school. I was like a little 12-year-old dropout, but I had to go on the school bus. So I would go on the bus and then I would just not go to school. I would just wander the neighborhood. There was a lovely church across the street that made grilled cheese sandwiches for people. So I just went there, probably the beginning of my emotional eating difficulty. And then I would get back on the school bus to go home. And then they caught on and I had to start going to school again. But remember, I'm a Leo, so I'm not going to take these things laying down. So I took matters into my own hands and just beat up my bully, and it felt really good in the moment, but I kind of lost the fight. And so then so now my ego is also like pounded. And of course there's a zero tolerance policy for fighting. So then I'm expelled. And so this was school for me. Like, it just was like crisis after crisis after crisis. And I'll never forget this. I was sitting in the blue office chairs, the ones with the metal arms. And I'm not in the principal's office. So all I hear is my mom and the principal coming out of the office together. And like, my mom's a single mom. She doesn't have time for this. She doesn't have time for her daughter to get expelled. And I'll never forget it. And if you're a parent and have heard these words, you know exactly what I'm feeling right now. The door opens, and this is the part that I hear. The principal says to my mom, "I don't think we can meet Shelley's needs in this building." And the look on my mom's face was just like, what? What do you mean you can't? This is her school. This is her community. You can't just not take her. What do you mean you can't meet her needs? That's your job, is to meet her needs. And so she's trying to like navigate the system. No alternative was given. She's just like, I'm just going to have to like have a 12-year-old who dropped out of school. Like, this isn't a solution. And so, yeah, so Virginia knows everyone has a year like this, right? And so we leave, and my mom, I remember, she just started crying in the car. She's like, "I don't know what we're going to do." She's like, "I can't afford to send you to a private school. I can't send you away to like a boarding school. Like, I don't know what to do." And so and I was happy. I was just like, "I just won't go to school, Mom." She's like, "No, you can't just not go to school." I'm like, "I'll learn at home." She's like, "I can't. I work full time. There's no one else here. You can't just teach yourself at home at 12. And so I think that I'm beating the system because I don't have to go back. So over the summer, because this was in April. So like, I just didn't go back to school, right? And I think this is the greatest, because here's the other thing, is that I only felt unsuccessful at school. I felt fine everywhere else. I felt liked. I felt supported. Like in the world, I didn't feel disabled. In the world, it was just at school that I didn't feel successful. And of course, like, I didn't have the like insight as a 12-year-old to understand the systemic problems of this story. But I'm going to tell you what happened next, which was like changed the trajectory of my life. Okay. So my mom gets a call. Of course, I find all of this out later. My mom gets a call, and a new school is opening in Edmonton, where I live. And I was invited. I love that word, invited. Hey, I was invited. Like it kind of like, it makes it look like you have a choice, but do you? I was invited to attend this new school. It wasn't an alternative school, but it was kind of set up differently. In Edmonton, we had junior highs, which are basically just high schools, the same structure and pedagogy of a high school, but just for younger kids. This school wasn't designed as a junior high. It was designed as a middle school, which how they're supposed to work is they're not small high schools. What they are they're schools that follow the research and pedagogy specific students. So it's a brand new school. All of these teachers are committed to middle school pedagogy. It's inclusive. There's no special education department. Everyone's just kind of working together. The whole school's organized in teams. And so I'm invited to the school. And the day before school, I knew something was different the day before school. So we started school on like the day after Labor Day. So that the Monday night, the phone rings at my house. And my mom's like, "Shelley, it's your teacher." And I'm just like, how can I already be in trouble? I haven't even gone into the building yet. So I'm just like, great. I'm already in trouble. And so I pick up the phone. I'll never forget this. So now I'm 13, starting grade 8. I pick up the phone. I'm like, "Hello." And my teacher says, "Hi, Shelley, I'm Mrs. Smith. I'm going to be your teacher this year." And at first I'm confused because you don't just have one teacher in junior high school, right? So now I'm just like, "What do you mean you're my teacher?" And I'm just like, "Why are you calling?" Because I'm skeptical. And she's like, "Well, tomorrow's going to be a big day. It's the first day of the school's opening. There's going to be media there. There's going to be new people that you don't know." And so I'm just like thinking, like, why are you being so nice? Like, what? And then she says this. She's like, "Well, I just wanted to call and let you know that tomorrow I'll be wearing a red gingham shirt, so that if you need to find someone to talk to or to help you, just look for the red gingham." Now, the only reason why I knew what red gingham was is because my mom is a sewer. And so I remember thinking, great, I've got the picnic table teacher. That's what I thought. And I'm like, "Okay, bye." Weird. So then the next day I go to school, and sure enough, there is media, there are people everywhere. And what do I feel? Anxiety and feeling overwhelmed. So guess what I think about? I'm like, where's that picnic table, teacher? And sure enough, I spot her and I just, casually run up to her. I'm like, hi, I'm Shelley Moore. And she's just like, nice to meet you. And she just like was like calm and happy to see me. And I'm like, this is so strange. And so how the school was different was, so there's 4 teams, like Harry Potter, but not as exciting. Like it was like the blue team and the red team. Okay. And then each team had 4 classrooms, and the classrooms were diverse ages. So they ranged in age from grade 6 to 9, from 7 to 9. We were all mixed together. Now, the other important thing about that age group is, the most important thing about the age group is that there's a sense of that there's community. So that we were a cohort for all 3 years. The other thing that's important is that you start to be exposed to subject area experts. And so rather than our cohort being split up and us going to different teachers, this subject area specialists came to us. So we stayed together, and a math teacher came to us and did kind of like, oh my goodness, taught basically grade 7, 8, 9 together with different levels of complexity in the same room to our cohort. And so we stayed with that teacher for all 3 years. Like, it was brilliant. It was brilliant. Everything was inquiry based, so we could show our learning in a different way. It was the first Apple technology site in Canada, so it was the first time I had access to technology, which was a game changer for me. And so, like a few weeks in, my mom's like, Shelley, like, how do you like your new school? And I was like, oh, Mom, I love it. And she goes, you've never said that about school. What makes this school different? And I was like, I don't know, because remember, I'm 13. But I did say this, and here's the moment that if I ever see Dan Habib again, I will tell him. This is what I said to my mom. Why did I have to go to any other school? Now, this sounds pretty innocent, but now I am almost 42. And I'm thinking about this, and I'm like, isn't this just so the story for so many of us? For me to finally not just survive, but thrive, I had to not only fail, because not only did I fail out of grade 7, but I had to navigate crisis and trauma. And when you think about all of the things that kids are navigating in this world, like, school can't also be a place of crisis and trauma. And I always come back to this moment. I'm just like, isn't this just so the way? Before people get their needs met, whether they're kids, whether they're parents, whether they're teachers, whether they're schools, whether they're districts, before they actually get what they need, they not only have to fail, they have to completely get to like rock bottom crisis trauma. People are like just in tears, crying, like, what? How is this the process in education? And so I'm now going to show you my grade 8 school photo. Take a little mental picture of this photo, and now I'm going to show you grade 8. I love my grade 8 photo. Look at me. Look at my chin. My chin is up. My shoulders are back. I'm out of my eyes. Look at my sparkle. The difference between these 2 years was inclusion. And so I talked to my teacher, my grade 8 teacher, Shannon Smith, because I still talk to her. She spoke at my wedding because she changed my life. And I remember I asked her, I'm just like, Shannon Smith, like, why did you call me the night before? And she's like, well, Shelley, you're a teacher now. You know that we have meetings about kids like you. And I'm like, yes, I do. And then she's like, and we sat at that meeting the week before school started, and we went through the students. And because I said to her, I'm like, I feel like my grade 8 year was the only time in my education career up to that point, and actually I would say ever, that my needs were anticipated, where I didn't have to fail before my needs were met. And she's like, well, that was exactly the point. Like, we sat around as a team and we talked about kids that we knew were coming, and we talked about their stories, and we talked about how can we catch them before they fall. And I was just like, well, you did. She's like, I know. And she's like, I made a really conscious effort about something. And this is what she said to me. She's like, because she was a trained special educator, but she was the classroom teacher. Anyways, I could go on about this school. She said to me, she's like, I kind of committed to something different with you. She's like, I was at this new school and I was trained, how I was trained for special education was, you assess the kids, find out find out what's wrong, and then you fix them. Like that's the medical model, right? And she's like, but I made a decision with you that was different, because when I went to this new school, we're looking at middle school methods, community identity is really important for middle school, but also strengths and interests. And she's like, you know what, I made a decision when I knew you were coming to my class that she said this, I'll never forget it. She's like, I was going to read you before your file. And those words, even when I say them, like, it kind of gives me goosebumps to this day, because I was just like, there are so many kids who need a person who's willing to do that. And then I'm like, did you ever read my file? She's like, no, I didn't need to, because everything I needed to know about you, I could learn through our relationship. And I was like, don't get me wrong, there's a time and a place for a file, but the relationship that we had was more important than the crisis and the failure that was in that probably 4-inch thick file, And so when I think about that year, I think about belonging. I think about, I felt smart this year. I felt like I had contributions. I actually started to go ahead of my grade in math because they were cross grade groupings. It changed my life. The school changed my life. Now, here's the part that started to get me, though, because let's look at the big ideas of this school. Okay, here's my little class. Here's my teacher, Mrs. Smith. Here's the EA for the class, which I realized in my 30s was actually there for me. But this EA was so good because she didn't only work with me, but she worked with the whole class. She was there because I was there, but I never, ever thought she was there for me until I was 30, when I was like, oh, Miss Dawn was so helpful. Miss Dawn, she would join the yearbook club with me. Oh my goodness, she helped me when I played basketball. And I'm like, Miss Dawn gave me a Christmas present. I'm like, oh my goodness, Miss Dawn was there for me. But good for Miss Dawn, because she was there. She was a part of that whole community, right? But let's think about what made this year different than any other year. Community, relationships, rapport. I had access to assistive technology. I could show my learning in any way. And they were inclusive classrooms. They were diverse classrooms of all abilities, of all ages, of all experiences. And then it hit me. Why is this the exception? Why is this the alternate school? Why is this the exception? What? That doesn't make any sense. There is no reason why every school can't